If you're looking for an athletic program that is designed to make you faster, more explosive, and more powerful, then this is it. This is our rugby power and speed program, which just released inside of our peak performance program, and I'm giving it all to you for free. So what's up? I'm Nick Lyden, owner of the Peak Performance Program, certified strength and conditioning coach, and works with hundreds of athletes. And I don't want to waste any more time. Let's get into this. So this is going to be for people who actually want to learn and utilize some of this training. So a couple of big concepts so we understand what's going on before I start to dive into the training. And this is only 3 days. I have 3 more days. The goal of this training block is to maximize our power, speed, explosiveness, and our conditioning going into season. Okay, so we just finished up our strength and power block, which is about a 6-week block or 8-week block that you can see in my channel. I did the same exact thing that I'm doing here in that one. Then I'd recommend that you do that one first before going into this one, because we're trying to build up some of our capacities with force output before we really start to transition it into more power and explosiveness, which is what we're doing in this one. We're utilizing a periodization model or training model called undulating periodization. Is daily undulating periodization. I think this works really well for athletes who tend to struggle with the more power and high velocity and twitchiness side of things. Like myself, that's myself as an athlete. I do really well with the strength outputs, but I tend to struggle a little bit more in the elastic nature. And this type of training program really helps our athletes do that. And it helps with athletes that are elastic as well. It just highlights those abilities even more and plays more on their strengths. So the undulating periodization, there's 3 main undulating periodization days that we're doing. So we have a strength focused day, because we don't want to just lose all the strength that we built in the previous block. The foundation of power and speed and all that stuff is going to be strength. And we want to make sure that we keep that high during this. We don't want to just purely focus on power and not have any strength in there, because our overall force output over weeks would start to decrease. So we want to make sure that we have that maintained, if not getting a little bit stronger. Okay, so the first day is all about maintaining and improving strength and maximal force output. Okay, the second main big day that we're doing, and it's not up here yet, is a power focused day where we're trying to achieve peak power outputs. Sometimes we're trying to go heavy loads as fast as we can. Other times we're trying to hit that peak power output. And then the last day is more of a elastic, very fast twitch, very quick ground contact time type of training, where we're trying to rewire the central nervous system to be faster. And then you're going to see sprinkled in throughout this, you can see here we have some isos and plyos, and the conditioning is another optional day. We have acceleration and we have top speed training that are going to have some conditioning in there. So that's the overarching design of this. And this is going to be a 4 to 6 week program that you would run. So the first day, this is a full body strength day. Okay. So one thing I'm doing in the dynamic warm-ups and in the warm-up is adding in about 5 minutes of jump rope. And this is just a way for us to get a ton of extensive plyometrics and a ton of ankle strengthening and additional like elastic training for the ankle. And it's very simple, it provides a great warm-up. So we're doing a jump rope throughout these different days that we're doing besides the speed training days. Okay, now before we get into the heavy lifting, I'm trying to microdose as much speed work as I can in throughout the actual workout. So this might require you to look a little silly to people who aren't athletic training in your gym, okay? What we're doing in the beginning, this is a max force plyo plus speed, okay? So we're trying to achieve something called post-activation potentiation, which means you choose a movement, like a heavy strength movement or something that you can produce maximal force with, and then you take it into an explosive or speed-based movement. What we're using here is called a power complex, or a play on a power complex, which if you don't know what that is, you can check out the link below where I give away my 7 methods for developing explosive strength and power down below. You can check that out, it's free, where it explains all of these, it explains contrast, that's everything that we're doing in here. Okay, so the first thing, and we're definitely more specific with what we're trying to do, and again, this is for rugby players, so it's going to be a little bit tailored that way, but you can, if you're a different sport, you can change it up as you need to fit your sport, okay? So there's a little bit more sport specific work that we're getting into now compared to our previous training blocks where it's a little bit more general and focusing on the qualities that we're trying, just general qualities that we're trying to develop, okay? So we're doing a sprinter overcoming isometric where we're pushing off of both feet, where we're trying to be at about a 45-degree angle. Again, this is to get us in the position of accelerating, and with the overcoming isometric, you're not moving against an object, but you're able to produce maximal amounts of force compared to any other type of training. Eccentric training, concentric training, isometrics allow you to produce the most amount of force, and that's the drive and adaptation that we're looking for to then get that post-activation potentiation we're looking for. And the other benefit with overcoming isometrics is, yes, it's highly demanding on the CNS and may fatigue that, but in terms of like muscular damage and being sore, it's very, very minimal, okay? So we get our overcoming isometrics, we get ramped up, then we're going into a similar type of movement and force projection that we're going, right? This is very horizontal, and everything we're doing is very horizontal with this and focused around accelerating quickly. So we're getting into a half kneeling broad jump where we're in a kneeling position simply to help keep us low, drive that knee over the toe, and then we're jumping out as far as we possibly can with that lead leg to mimic how hard you should actually push into the ground when you're trying to accelerate very, very quickly. And then we're going into a half kneeling start after this. And these don't need to be one right after the other, okay? With contrast type training complexes where you're trying to achieve post-activation potentiation, honestly, you can rest up to about 2 minutes in between it. It really depends on the athlete and how conditioned they are and how they respond to training. Some of my athletes can go boom, 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 right in a row, and they feel really good, and they're not fatigued from this, but they have accumulated enough work over the years to be able to handle that. Whereas some of my younger guys, or maybe not as experienced with workload and haven't quite built their body up to that level, they need to take 45 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes to allow their body to recover, to be fresh before going into this. So it really depends on that. After we get done with that, right, then we're gonna get into our heavy contrast, strength and power based work. And we're using a box squat, and this variation is more of a touch and go box squat. It's not your traditional box squat where you stop and pause and take away the stretch, shorten cycle, and then utilize the propulsion phase of your muscles and purely your muscles to drive force. We're trying to touch and go because we're trying to, again, maximize the total force output with this and minimize fatigue on the athlete. So touch and go is going to make that happen. It's going to be a little bit better to allow us to train hard at high values and high outputs without necessarily fatiguing the body down too much. After that, we're gonna take, again, 30, 45 second break in between. Then we're gonna get into an approach vertical jump, okay? So really with the approach vertical jump, again, trying to maximize force output, jump as high as you possibly can, run up, take a few gather steps, jump up, try to touch the rim, or jump onto a box if you wanna minimize some of the contact or impact coming on the way down, and that's what I do. After we get done through the contrast work here, now we just get into some accessory-based works to round out the rest of the training. So prior to this training block, we did a lot of bilateral movement. So both arms, both legs at the same time. Now we're starting to integrate more unilateral movements, which is why we're going into a dumbbell alternating bench press. And then we're going into a barbell single leg RDL, okay? 3-4 sets, 4-6 reps each side. After that, we're gonna hit a little bit of the back, okay? So we're doing some chest supported rows. You can throw in any row variation you want in here. I chose the chest supported rows because it's a little bit easier to set up. It doesn't take as much time and effort as necessarily like a barbell bent over row where you're having to go super, super heavy. And then we're going into some weighted chin-ups. And then lastly, we're hitting some core strength and stability with farmer's carries single arm. Now, this is a lot of work, especially if you're training hard and pushing hard, which is why some of the other days are a lot lighter. So this day may take an hour and a half all in, whereas the other days are gonna be a lot lighter because we're trying to get that huge strength stimulus on this day, and then you'll see it's a little bit less intense as we go on. So after our strength day, now this is an optional day for our athletes. Typically, again, this day is a little bit more for athletes who wanna work a little bit more on power and explosiveness and potentially get a little bit more conditioning in. So it's our ISO's Plyo conditioning day, and there is some mobility that I didn't have enough room to put on here And we are going to start off with our plyometrics. So we have about 5 different plyometrics that we're doing here. First 3 are going to be more extensive based plyometrics, meaning they're hops, skips, things like that, quick ground contact times. And then we get into 2 intensive, means like max power output, max distances, max heights that we're going for. So first one is a single leg plate hop, very simple, trying to get as many reps as we can in about 20 seconds. Then we're going into a dumbbell pogo hop, and the dumbbells are there purely to provide a little bit more total eccentric force that we have to overcome to get back on up. Okay, so after we do a few sets of the dumbbell pogo hops, typically it's around 10, maybe 20% of your body weight in each hand. Then we go into max height pogo hops. You can do these moving forward, you can do these on and off a box, but this is where you're really trying to get as high as you possibly can and train the ankle to transfer force and improve some elasticity and stiffness with these. So after we get through those 3, then we get into some lateral movements with the drop-in skater jumps. You can do skater jumps, you can do banded skater jumps. We're really just trying to work on the lateral force production. I like the drop-in skater jumps because there is an inherent stability from landing that you have to overcome before redirecting back on out. And without stability, you don't have power, right? You're gonna limit your power if you lack stability. So that's why I like these for the skater jumps. And then we have repeat broad jumps where you're trying to jump as far as you possibly can and as little of jumps as possible. Now, this is very advanced, and I'll tell you straight up, this is not like beginner stuff. This is for an advanced athlete looking to get the edge. So if you're going through this and like, holy crap, this is a lot, yes, it is, because this is for advanced athletes who have already laid the foundation that they need in order to get here to be able to take their training to the next level. And if you need help getting there, that's what the Peak Performance Program is. And then once you get there, we have programs like this to keep you going on. So this is lower body power plyometric based work. Now we're getting into some throws for the upper body, okay? So again, more power based work. Some that we do are chest passes, okay? So like a 1-step chest pass or any sort of chest pass where you're trying to throw the ball as hard as you possibly can. The next one is a little bit more geared towards our rugby athletes. A lot of times when you're passing, right, a rugby ball, you're coming from a sprint, putting the brakes on, and then going across your body. So to help replicate that a little bit, we're doing a single leg jump where you have to land, put the brakes on, decelerate, and then transition laterally to then throw and produce as much force and power as possible. So that's why we're doing the single leg jump into a scoop toss. And then we're getting straight up, a little bit of core work, a little bit of rotational work with a 3-way slam for our throws. Got through that, we got our power stuff done. Now we're gonna take care of the joints and tendons and get into some yielding isometrics, which we do a lunge isometric or a barbell lunge or isometric. We're trying to hold for up to 2 minutes. Typically we start around 30-45 seconds. Single leg hamstring iso and switches to help protect the hamstring, get them used to being able to move fast and stop quickly. And then we're doing an overcoming isometric on the Achilles tendon in a plantar flex position to help strengthen that position and help with more force transfer with each step that we take on the pitch. If you got time, conditioning. Very simple. One of my favorite conditionings. And we're gonna utilize this a lot because you're able to accumulate a lot of fatigue, stress the lungs and stress the legs a lot, which typically is what goes within a rugby game. First one's very simple. It's 4 rounds, 10 seconds on, 50 seconds off. Then you go 20 seconds on, 40 seconds off. Then you go 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, and you rinse and repeat. And you're trying to go as hard as you can for each of those. With the 30-seconder, you're probably not going to be able to maintain a super high power and wattage output, but for the first 2, you're definitely trying to give it everything you possibly can with this. Empty the gas tank, okay? Make your conditioning harder than the actual game so you can play all 80. The last day that we have here before we get into the next one is our acceleration and conditioning, okay? I do say if this conditioning is gonna smoke you, and you wanna focus more on acceleration and agility, then you could probably take that out and just add some extra conditioning at the end of this day. So with acceleration and agility, we are doing a dynamic warm-up, and then we're getting into our acceleration series. So the first is a 3-cone start where we're trying to work on our technique, hit back behind our hip and have what's called a negative step, and apply force horizontally, trying to work on some of those mechanics. Then we get into jump back start. So a jump back start is to help teach the athlete how to be in the correct position, that lean position, and then get out very, very quickly. It's almost like a false step, like a planned false step to get out quickly, okay? And then take some rest. We'll do a contrast type set with our speed-based work where we're doing sled sprints into some 20-yard sprints. Okay, so for this, again, you can rest 2 minutes, 3 minutes in between. That's not gonna take away from the post-activation potentiation. You can do it in 30 seconds. It really just depends on the athlete, but the goal is to be as fast as possible here. So you're probably gonna need to rest about a minute, minute and a half, okay, with sleds into 20-yard sprints. And then we get our agility in. So for agility, we're working some technique with a 3-cone cut drill, outside foot plant, good body positioning, a shuffle sprint, and then a pro shuttle. Now the one thing I want to say about agility with this training, this wouldn't be, say, your true agility where you have someone you're reacting off of, either visual or audio cues, because most of us are training solo. I'm training solo, so cone drills and pre-planned drills is going to be the best that we can get. Unless you have a coach or someone else with you, then you can start to add those things in. So here are the first 3 days. The next 3 days that are going to come up are going to be our power, velocity, and top speed training day. All right, now we're getting into the next 3 days of training. Before I get into this, you can modify this as you need to fit your schedule and how your body responds. So if this is too much training volume, I would probably recommend cutting some of it out, okay, to fit your needs. For me, I like training a lot and I respond well to it. But again, I've built up to this as well. I know not every single athlete does this. And you can move around some of the days as well to give your body more rest for top speed training. So this doesn't need to fit in a perfect 7-day-a-week schedule. You can extend it out to maybe a 10-day split if you need rest in between to really help your body along with the adaptations we're looking to get, okay? So the next day is our power focus day. So with this, we are trying to achieve peak power outputs with what we're trying to do. Now, power and achieving peak power outputs, it really depends on the exercise for how much weight you're trying to move. Some of the exercises, it's going to be 20 to 30%. Other exercises, it's going to be anywhere from 60, 70, 80, 85 plus. It really just depends on the exercise that you're using, which is why when you look at the 1 rep max percentage for power, there's such a huge range, okay? For us, with power, and I'll explain this, a hang power clean, this I want heavy and as fast as possible. With a hang power clean, you can swap either of those in. You're probably gonna get up to that 80-85% range where you're hitting peak power output. Whereas other days or other areas, like on our velocity day, you're probably using maybe 15-20%, and that's gonna give you the peak power output that you're looking for. So it really just depends. One tool that I use, and I'm not sponsored by them at all, is Metric VBT. Okay, it's Metric VBT. It's only for Apple, though. They allow you to see at least your velocities with barbell-based movements with that. So that's one thing that I use to help track that. So starting off with our heaviest, most power-based movement, it's going to be our hang power clean or power clean, and then we're taking that into a drop-in box jump. Okay, so you can still get some of that contrast training effect even with power-based exercises if the load's heavy enough and you're moving with the right intention. This is another reason why we have such a long process of strength training prior to this, because stronger athletes get a greater potentiating effect from contrast type training than weaker athletes do. So strength is a foundation which allows us to really maximize this portion in this type of phase, is because we spent that time to develop, okay, the strength numbers that we're trying to hit. Okay, so hang power clean into drop-in box jumps, 3 to 5 reps, 3 to 5 sets. Go heavy, jump fast, jump high. Okay, so this is our lower body sort of power-based work. Then we're gonna get into some upper body work, so a landmine squat to press. So again, this is gonna be a little bit more full body. I'm really trying to get our athletes to transfer force from the legs up through the core and out the arms and be aggressive and be violent. If you have a landmine kind of Viking press attachment, it works great. If not, you can just put both hands on the end of the bar, it works just the same. And then after we get done with our sets and reps there, we're going to get into some drop, catch, and explode type bench. You may have seen this in some of the old Adam Archuleta type training videos, and the whole goal between the drop, catch, and explode bench is that we're increasing the speed of the eccentric or dropping of the weight, catching and redirecting it immediately. So we're trying to really put a huge stress on that stretch, shorten cycle, and the amortization phase of our bench press, and then redirecting that to get more power out of it. I will say this is very advanced, and if you are not there yet, just do something like a banded bench press or speed bench press. I have a whole video on my channel where I go over different bench press techniques, and I dive into this one specifically a lot further in depth so you know exactly how to do it. After we get done with our horizontal press, then we're going into some sleds. Now with these sleds, I want these heavier and I want these moving as fast as you can, but I'm really focusing on how much force we're putting into the ground versus our other acceleration-based day with the sleds. Typically, I want to set around 50% of a velocity decrement, so it's a little bit lighter. This, probably around 60, 70%, and I really want to focus on driving through and developing a little bit more strength and power in that areas versus more of a velocity side of things. So heavy sleds here, and then we're going to get into, I think a lot of people are going to see this and be like, dude, this guy's doing cheetah reps. Yeah, that's kind of the point. It's a single arm power row. So we've done barbell power rows before where we're using a little bit of leg drive to create momentum and increase the bar speed and allow for a heavier load. We're taking the same principle and using it with a single arm dumbbell. Okay, so I highly recommend wrist wraps for this, so grips isn't the limiting factor. And you're trying to row as heavy as weight possible, as fast as you possibly can. A little English and a little cheating is fine with this because we're after power with this. And then we're going to take that into a similar type of contrast set with a single arm sled row where now we're engaging the full body, integrating it, and getting through a follow through with the entire movement. So not a ton. This shouldn't take you really a whole lot of time. And then we get into our conditioning, and one of our conditionings that we're doing is the assault bike, where you can do sprint intervals if you don't want to do the assault bike again. And then we're pairing that with either a med ball slam or a kettlebell swing. So just think with the conditioning we're trying to teach our body how to recycle energy very, very quickly. That is going to be how we play in the game. And in rugby and in sports, most of the times it's very high inputs or very high effort in power and speed, quick rest periods, very quick rest periods, and then we're required to do it again and again and again. And what we're trying to do is teach our body to recover quickly so we can maintain high outputs instead of going and dropping down and dropping down and dropping down, which is typically why people don't have the same speed or power or explosiveness because they haven't worked up the capacity of that energy system to be able to handle this. So this is our glycolytic repeat power conditioning. Okay, that's our power day. You're in and you're out probably in an hour, okay? Next day is our velocity day. So this is all about moving very, very quickly, being very, very fast, being very, very violent, okay? You should get done with this workout and feel like, damn, I want to do more. Perfect. That's exactly what we want, okay? So after that dynamic warm-up, we're going to do some barbell squat jumps at around 20, maybe 30%, where we're trying to get in and out and jump as high as we possibly can. We're going to pair that with a band-assisted vertical jump because we're trying to get an overspeed train. In fact, again, this is all about moving faster than we normally do so we can train our CNS to be faster when we need it on the field. Now, we're going to get into some of our upper body stuff, which is our dumbbell snatch and landmine rotor press. With the dumbbell snatch, you can go typically heavier. With this, you don't need to be at like 20-30%. You can probably be a little bit heavier because if you go too light, your arm's probably going to fly off, right? So with the dumbbell snatch, you can really do some heavier loads, but still move very, very quickly. And it's the velocity that I'm looking for, which is going to be around 1.3-ish meters per second for what we're going for today. Landmine rotor press is, again, a little bit of like full body coordination and explosive power, some rotational power, transferring force through the body, a little bit lighter loads, moving quickly, moving fast, okay? Going right along with that, we're gonna get into some fast eccentric RDLs to hit the hamstrings and the glutes. So fast eccentric RDLs, we're trying to lengthen that muscle belly as fast as we can, put the brakes on and redirect and come back on up. So the loads are really light here. The loads are probably 30%, maybe 40% tops. We're gonna put this in a little bit of that like power complex we talked about before, okay? So we're going fast, even faster, as fast as possible is what we're going for, okay? So then we're gonna get into a single leg down where we're focusing on pulling through with the hamstrings and glutes, trying to jump as far as you possibly can. And then we're gonna get into some seated tantrums. So the seated tantrums are a way to train your central nervous system how to contract and relax very, very quickly. And there is a large amount of muscle recruitment with the seated hamstring tantrums with that. So typically the tantrums, 7 to 10 seconds, full effort, and then you're gonna rest. And then after that, we're gonna get into some core, so some lateral bending with the kettlebell windmills, really great movement. I think you get in awkward positions in rugby, and I think this is a great way to train some of those positions, to be strong in those positions. And then we're getting into a little bit of rugby specific work, which is our core planks and pops, where we have a med ball and we're walking out with it, keeping our back flat, keeping our core tight, and then we're doing a pop to help simulate and some stability that's going to be required from a body coming in and hitting you and tackling you. I must say that none of this is ever going to replicate the skill and practice work of actually doing rugby at practice, okay? Practice is for skill development and transferring it. Strength and conditioning and lifting is for developing the qualities and skills around it. We're just picking a few very sport-specific areas that I think more athletes need some support with. Okay, and then we get into the mobility after this. Very simple with some slider-based work, strength through length. Now, top speed. So if you need to take a day of rest after this, go for it. If you need to switch these days around to focus more on top speed, go for it. For me, this is a natural kind of deload throughout the week. Power, we get like a moderate intensity, not banging the body up too much. This, I'm feeling really good. Doesn't really do much to hurt my body or break it down. And then here, I feel really great after doing a velocity-based day. So that's why I have it like this. But if you need an extra day of rest, it's totally fine, okay? So for top speed, there is some conditioning here at the end in our program. I don't have it here. It's dynamic warm-up. Then we get into a plyo and bound series. This kind of serves as a primer as well. It gets a little bit extra plyometric-based work in here, and some power work in here. Then our main thing we're working on, if you have a 10 to 15% slope or hill, I highly recommend doing downhill sprints. This is an overtraining speed effect that we can get on the body to help the central nervous system cycle and fire faster. If you don't have that, don't worry. Just hit some fly 10s and fly 20s, 4 or 5 sets, maximal rest so you can maintain speeds. And you're not seeing more than a 5% dip in your speeds with this. If you go below that, now you're not training top speed, and it's kind of like a shitty conditioning, and you're not really getting much out of it. So as much rest as you need, and then I'll have a couple of longer duration sprints after we take 5-6 minutes rest after that, but the volume is super, super low with this. So this is the rugby power and speed program, and I promise you, if you do this, you are going to feel way more athletic, powerful, explosive, and in shape for your actual season. And if you want to join us in doing the rugby power and speed program, and then take this into in-season training, which I'll have all planned out, go ahead and check out the links below and join us in the Peak Performance program. Train hard, and I'll see you in the next video.